All right, let's do some cardiovascular anatomy here. So if you remember, there are four chambers in the heart, two up top, two on the bottom. So let's take a look at this diagram, and let's start here. So there are two chambers up top, two on the bottom. You'll notice that the two bottommost chambers are much larger and more muscular. So remember, in anatomical position, this is the patient's left, this is the patient's right. We're going to start down here at the left ventricle. And what the left ventricle does is it pumps oxygenated blood out through this massive artery here, the largest artery in the body. It's called the aorta. And the aorta has three branches that feed your right arm, your head, brain, and your left arm. And then it turns and goes southbound, goes inferiorly, dives behind the heart, and feeds oxygenated blood to the rest of your lower body, including your lower extremities. So once we get down here, let's say down by your toes, we need to drop off the oxygen, and we're going to pick up carbon dioxide, and that's a result of cellular respiration. If you remember, glucose and oxygen gives you CO2, H2O, and ATP when you're doing aerobic cellular metabolism, aerobic cellular respiration. So we're going to be doing gas exchange. We're going to drop off our oxygen, pick up our CO2. Now our CO2 is going to come back up through our venous system. Arteries always go away from the heart, veins always go towards the heart. Come back up through our venous system here, and this happens to be the inferior vena cava, and this is the superior vena cava, and they drain from their respective regions in the body, and they drain into the right atrium, which then pumps into the right ventricle, and the right ventricle pumps out through the pulmonary trunk, out through the pulmonary arteries, left and right. And so therefore we now have CO2 rich blood headed towards the lungs, headed towards the left lung, headed towards the right lung, where we do gas exchange. So because we have a buildup of carbon dioxide here in the capillary beds, higher concentration in the capillary beds compared to in the alveolar space, the carbon dioxide is going to diffuse into the alveolar space, and when you exhale, travel up through your bronchial tree, and you'll exhale CO2. And we have evidence of that with end-tidal CO2 detection. Conversely, when you take a breath in, you're going to bring in oxygen. Oxygen is going to travel down your bronchial tree. That's another lecture. And it's going to be highly concentrated here in the alveoli, and will then diffuse through these simple squamous cells. Remember, simple means one layer, squamous is very thin cells, flattened cells. The oxygen will diffuse through fairly easily into the pulmonary capillaries, and now we will be traveling back to the heart. Okay, so we're coming back to the heart through the pulmonary veins. Yes, veins do carry oxygenated blood when they're in the pulmonary system, and they will then carry from the left lung and the right lung oxygenated blood back to the right atrium. Left atrium. And the left atrium will pump down into the left ventricle. The left ventricle will pump out through the aorta, and there you have it. There's your entire circulatory circuit.